Most gardeners don't realize that the reason earthworms disappear from their beds has nothing to do with lack of worms in the environment. The real issue is that the soil becomes uninviting to them, too dry, too compacted, or biologically inactive. When that happens, even fertile-looking soil becomes a dead zone underground, and plant growth slowly collapses without obvious warning signs above the surface. This mistake usually comes from treating soil like static dirt instead of a living habitat. Worms don't just show up because compost is added once. They multiply when conditions stay consistently favorable over time. Without that stability, they simply migrate deeper or leave entirely. Before we go deeper into what actually triggers worm multiplication, I want to mention something I use constantly to read soil conditions accurately. I use a 4-in-1 soil moisture meter that measures moisture levels, pH, temperature, and sunlight intensity. It helps me identify whether worm activity problems are actually caused by dryness, heat stress, or pH imbalance instead of guessing. I'll leave the exact one I use in the description if you want to check it out. It's a simple tool, but it prevents a lot of wrong assumptions that damage soil health. Now let's talk about what you actually need to bury if you want earthworms to multiply rapidly in a garden. This isn't about dumping random compost and hoping for results. It's about creating a localized biological hotspot underground where worms can feed, reproduce, and stay protected from environmental stress. The most effective buried material I've tested for this is partially decomposed organic matter combined with carbon-rich bedding. That includes things like moist shredded leaves, aged compost, and small amounts of kitchen waste that have already started breaking down. When this is buried at the right depth, it becomes a stable feeding zone rather than a shock source. Let me explain what happens underground when this is done correctly. Once buried at about 10 to 20 centimeters deep, the material begins attracting microbial activity almost immediately. Bacteria start breaking down soft tissues, which generates heat and softens structure. That microbial activity is what signals earthworms to move in. Worms are not randomly attracted to soil. They follow microbial density and moisture stability. If those two conditions are present, they concentrate rapidly in that zone. I tested this in a raised bed where worm activity was almost non-existent after months of dry weather. I buried a mixture of soaked shredded leaves and half-finished compost in several pockets across the bed and kept moisture consistent for 2 weeks. What happened next was not subtle. Within 3 weeks, worm channels started appearing around those buried pockets. By week 5, the soil structure had visibly changed. It became darker, looser, and held moisture more evenly. When I dug deeper, I found worm clusters directly concentrated around the buried organic zones. But here's the key mistake most gardeners make. They bury material that is too fresh or too dry. Fresh kitchen waste without decomposition can rot anaerobically and repel worms instead of attracting them. Dry leaves without moisture are also useless underground because worms cannot process them without microbial preconditioning. So the rule is simple. If it is going underground, it must already be biologically active or at least partially broken down. Now let's connect this to real garden performance. In vegetable beds, especially tomatoes, kale, and beans, increased worm activity translates directly into improved root penetration. Worm channels act like natural irrigation pathways, allowing water and air to move deeper into the soil. That reduces surface stress and improves nutrient uptake stability. In container systems, worm multiplication is more sensitive because volume is limited. That's why I only use small buried pockets of compost rather than large deposits. Too much organic matter in containers can create anaerobic zones that damage roots instead of supporting worms. In open ground systems, spacing matters. I usually create buried organic zones every 50 to 100 centimeters depending on crop density. That creates a network of biological hotspots instead of a single concentrated area. One of the most overlooked benefits of this method is how it stabilizes soil moisture. Worm activity improves aggregation, which helps soil hold water during dry periods and drain properly during heavy irrigation or rain. That balance is critical for consistent plant growth. And this is where many gardeners miss the bigger picture. Earthworms are not just indicators of healthy soil. They are active engineers of it. They physically restructure soil, distribute nutrients, and create long-term fertility pathways that no synthetic amendment can replicate. So when people say bury this and worms will multiply, the truth is more precise. You are not creating worms, you are creating the conditions that allow them to stay, feed, and reproduce continuously. That distinction is what separates short-term results from long-term soil transformation. Another important correction is timing. Worm populations don't explode overnight. What you are actually building is a cycle. Microbes increase first, then worms follow, and then soil structure improves. If any part of that chain is missing, results slow down significantly. That's why observation matters more than assumptions. I always monitor soil conditions rather than relying on surface appearance alone. The same soil meter I mentioned earlier helps confirm whether moisture and temperature levels are actually within the range that supports biological activity. Once those conditions are stable, the system becomes self-reinforcing. More worms lead to better soil structure, which retains more moisture, which supports more microbial activity, which attracts even more worms. That is the real multiplication effect gardeners are trying to achieve. Not magic. Just biology working in cycles. If you want consistent results, stop thinking about worms as something you add or attract randomly. Start thinking about them as part of a system you design through moisture, organic matter placement, and time. That shift alone will change how your soil behaves within a single season. Subscribe to FarmLogic for more real-world soil experiments and practical gardening systems based on actual field results.